Welcome to Cover Stories with Chess Life, the U.S. Chess Federation's podcast that goes behind the scenes and more in depth about each month's Chess Life magazine cover story. Make sure to listen to our family of U.S. chess podcasts, which includes One Move at a Time on the second Tuesday of each month, where Dan Lucas talks to people who are advancing our mission statement, Ladies Night, which drops on the third Tuesday of each month, hosted by our women's program director, Jennifer Shahadi, and on the fourth Tuesday of each month, Chess Underground, hosted by our assistant director of national events, Pete Karagianis, in which he examines the game's eccentricities, peculiarities, and theoretical novelties. All can be found at the podcast link on Chess Life Online at uschess.org, or you can subscribe via iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Today's guest on Cover Stories with Chess Life is me, John Hartmann. Obviously, there's a bit of a problem in trying to host a podcast and interview yourself. So I started to think about the people in my life who I could ask to pinch hit and step in and ask me some questions. I asked my wife, but she was not keen on the idea. And then I thought, who else could I ask but my friend and mentor, John Watson. John and I spoke a little bit beforehand about some of the things we might discuss, including my contributions to the May issue of Chess Life, some of the work I've done before becoming editor of Chess Life, writing for Chess Life Online, doing the review column for Chess Life, some of the things we've been doing with the Chess Journalists of America, how I used to organize tournaments here in Nebraska, and some of my work as a very high-level computer ninja for some of the world's top chess players, believe it or not. There's a lot more to talk about, and I'm sure John will ask me some very good questions. But speaking from Omaha, Nebraska, where John Watson himself grew up, I bring you the John and John Show. John Watson, I'm ready for your questions.
Hi. Okay, John. Let me start out with, this is the Cover Story podcast. So let me just ask you about the May cover story, which you wrote which is about the 2022 Spring Classic in St. Louis. And it's entitled "The Future Is Now." So why do you call it that, and what's it about?
Well, there were a lot of ways we could have gone with that story. But for me, and I'm sure we're going to talk about my trip to Crossville to do some work triaging the U.S. Chess Library. But this was the first trip that I had taken really since the pandemic began that I took for pleasure. I had gone to Crossville once previously to do some preliminary work on the library, but going to Crossville and then stopping off in St. Louis on the way home to see the Spring Classic, that felt important to me. It felt, I don't know if momentous is the word, because, since then, despite being triple vaccinated, I've gotten COVID. And it seems like everybody I know is getting sick, but it still felt at the time like the world was opening up and there was this window where the future was here. Whatever that future looked like, it was here. And that was true for me personally. And it was also true looking at the chess. I mean, if you look at those two tournaments, the future of American chess was on display there. And the winners of the two events, Sam Sevian winning the A group and Avi Mishra winning the B group, that's, you're looking at the future of American chess with those two and some of the other players who were playing in the event, like Hans Niemann and Christopher Yu. So when I was trying to come up with a title for it, that's what kept ringing in my head. The future is here. The future is now. And it's true in terms of the chess that was being played, but personally, it also felt like something had changed. Like finally we could think about what's next.
Right, because it was the first of that kind of event in really a couple of years, right?
Yeah, so that was what was interesting to me when I went to St. Louis, and I spoke to the staff. They were all really excited to have the players back, and if you haven't been to the St. Louis Chess Club in one of these big events, the U.S. Championship certainly, but any of these quarterly classics where they get a lot of players who they might know or who have been there before. It's like getting the old gang back together, and that's really what it felt like. Watching people like Alex Lenderman, who's been playing in St. Louis for years now, who went to school in St. Louis, watching him walk up and as I say, I saw him sitting in the lobby at the hotel, or seeing Darius Swears have to go through security to go upstairs. It felt like chess was back, and the staff was really, they were very clear on this, that they really love these quarterly tournaments, partially because it's some of the same faces, it's some of the people they've gotten to know over the years, but it's also, it doesn't have the crowds that the big US championships like the Open Championship and the Women's Championship gets. So, they get to see their friends, they get to see some high level chess, but it's very calm and collegial. And, afterwards and I think we put some of the photos in the magazine. The players are all downstairs analyzing with each other and visiting with each other. And it just, after the last 2 years, it felt really good to see that.
Yeah, imagine live people playing chess and analyzing, doing postmortems, when we've spent a couple of years of people just doing no postmortems, really, because of most everything has been moved online, and so that must have been pretty exciting, and they must have had a lot of fun to actually be able to kind of communicate with their own cohorts and their own competitors, and so that must have been fun.
That was. Yeah, we got a number of quotes that we weren't able to use just because we didn't have page space. And everyone we spoke to, all the players, they were so happy to be playing again. They were. I mean, the conditions in St. Louis are always good. There's. I did a Twitter takeover for one day for US Chess, and I gave people a little sense of what it's like behind the scenes. There's these very nice lunch spreads, and there's coffee and any beverage you could want. They take very good care of the players, and I think they appreciate that. But more than that, it's like you said. I mean, just getting to do a postmortem with one of your peers, and not it not be an online thing where you play your games and then you're done. You get to sit and talk and discuss and kibitz, and it's
always been such an important part of chess, and especially the national teams. And I mean, these are Americans, and so they're really close people who they're going to be spending the next 20 years with, playing each other and traveling together, and presumably eventually playing in Olympiads and other team events. So it's really important for them to know each other and to be in touch with each other and work together.
Yeah, and I think some of that is on display. You can see the camaraderie. Even among the young players. I mean, I spoke to Abby and to Christopher Yu, and I mean, we're in good hands with those two. Those I did want to say, we had a lot of guest annotations. So I wrote the cover story, but I only wrote about 1,100 words of it, and the rest of it was annotations from the players themselves. And I was shocked at how good Abby's notes were. I mean, he's like 12, 13 years old. The kid can write, and he's very clear annotator. Gets to the point, doesn't burden his readers with too many deep analyses. It was really a pleasant surprise to see what a good job he did with that. So I hope the readers definitely take a look at those notes and play through them and appreciate them.
Okay, yeah, let's real quick, because I'd like to get on to talking about your own life and your own chess career. But before that, there was one other story in the May issue that you also wrote about the actor Jamie Foxx and his chess experiences in New Orleans with Jude Acers, who is a celebrity in his own right. So who is Acers, and how did this story develop?
So if you've ever been to New Orleans, or if you're planning on going and you're a chess fan, get yourself down to the French Market. And right outside a little praline shop, there's a man with a red beret who has been sitting there for years and years and years now, playing all comers in chess for a small fee. that man is Jude Acers, and he is a showman. He is, a very strong player. Easily, 23, 2400 in his prime. Gave simul tours I want to say in the 60s. And a great promoter of chess. But one day out of the blue, and every now and again I get these emails from Jude, as a number of people do, with some story or some link or something. And it turns out that one day, on his birthday, actually, Jamie Foxx showed up, jumped out of a van with some people, sat down to play, and very quickly a crowd formed. And as it turned out, there was a local photographer who was tipped off about it and went down and took some photos. And we were able to get those photos both in an online story and in the magazine. So, yeah, it was pretty neat to see Jude and to sort of feel his enthusiasm through his emails. And he was enthusiastic about Jamie Foxx's potential. Although I do wonder if that was maybe helped by how well Jamie was tipping. If you ever get down to
and Jamie Foxx is famous for his role as Ray Charles.
As Ray Charles, who was also a chess player, which a lot of people don't know. Yeah, he was a very enthusiastic chess player, which, being blind makes it a little harder. But I think he had they do make special sets for seeing impaired players, and I think he had one of those. And apparently he loved the game. I think there are some stories about him in the U.S. Chess Archives, in the Chess Life archives too. I should have dug those up, but I didn't. I don't know. Maybe in the future.
Sure, that's terrific. Okay, tell me in general about Chess Life and Chess Life Online. As I say, it's incredible how much work it is to do both of these at the same time. So it's amazing how many other things you do in the chess world. But just tell us about your general vision for these two publications. Are these things that are going to change, or are they sort of developing and evolving, or are you pretty happy with the way that that you're putting together their structure and their philosophy at this point? Or?
Yeah, so I have been editor of Chess Life now for almost 2 years.
Amazing.
It feels like a lot longer. And part of this, I don't think I fully understood what goes into doing a magazine every month before I took the job. I mean, I wrote a column, so I knew that there was a bit of a grind involved, because you have to, every month you got to make the donuts. You have to put something out. But to be the editor of such a historic magazine, it's a very big responsibility. At least it feels to me like a very big responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it is. Yeah. And also think of all the really important names for people who've been in the chess world. The Chess Life editors is in itself a sort of a hall of fame. It's because they've been such important people in the USCF and in US chess generally. And so it's a really prestigious thing. It's a really important position, and one that I'm really excited about you having, actually.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's, I feel, there's no small bit of imposter syndrome that I think that I feel quite often when I look at some of the people who have done this before me. But I am very fortunate to have two excellent mentors in Dan Lucas and Melinda Matthews, both of whom have done this job, and both of whom continue to be excellent support for me. Melinda still helps out with some things. She's got more than enough on her plate doing Chess Life Kids and all of the ancillary publications, the inward-facing publications that US Chess produces, the programs, the annual report, all of these things. That's under her purview. So that she has the time to assist with some of the things with Chess Life is staggering to me. But I have a great art director, Natasha, and she's making our magazine look fantastic. So yeah, I couldn't ask for better support. And
yeah, I think the visual aspect of the magazine is just wonderful. I would say that Dan Lucas made a huge leap in terms of professionalism when he came in, and I was so impressed with what happened when he changed. And what I see, partially what you've done, is I think the appearance of the magazine is greatly improved. The photography and the layout and is really impressive. So I don't know how many people are going to be listening to this that have been around for 20 or 30 years, but Chess Life was always fun and interesting and had some fantastic articles and columnists, but it really wasn't as professional as a major magazine really would want to be. Do you agree with that?
I hope so. I mean, we under our previous art director, Corey Kennedy, we undertook a pretty significant overhaul of the magazine, of everything about it, the layout, the fonts, I mean, everything from, even color schemes. And the result, I think, is a magazine that is visually appealing, but is also easier to read.
I agree. Yes.
And, Natasha Roberts is just continuing that and tweaking and adding her own flourishes. And I love the way it looks. To me, it's the best looking magazine out there. The best looking chess magazine, certainly. I am biased, I realize, but I do.
No, but it's true. Most the chess magazines are a little bit stuck in the past with respect to appearance.
This is,
as wonderful as something like New in Chess is, which is maybe the best in the world in terms of content and elite level players writing. It still doesn't have the visual excitement that Chess Life has. It doesn't make you excited to be a chess player. It does, and really appeals more to really advanced players, whereas Chess Life has a general appeal to both advanced and beginning players and intermediate players. So.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that, when you asked what the future looks like, my vision is a distinctively American magazine, one that really does focus on American chess, but one that slowly I'm trying to add different components to, like things for improvers, both adult improvers and improvers of a younger variety. So things like Alex King's series on the Tarrasch defense, I'm really excited about because, over the span of 6 issues, readers will come away, club players, players like, 1,400, 1,500. I honestly, I think up to about 2,000. Maybe.
Easily. Yes. And I think lower too. I think you don't have to be that advanced for that kind of, I think an 800 player could get a ton out of that series.
Well, especially because Alex did a very good job, I think, in the first installment, which I think was in February or March, where he sort of broke down key things you need to know about isolated queen pawn positions, and did it in a very in a simple but not simplified way. And I think it sort of set the tone for the entire series because, he does some serious theoretical work in there, but it's also presented in a way that, to have a full repertoire against everything except E4 in the series of maybe 15 to 20 pages is a very hard thing to do.
Oh, sure.
And he's doing it. So, that's the sort of thing that I'm really excited to be bringing to the magazine. I've got some other theoretical type articles. Some are a little higher pitched, some are not, but they'll be coming in future months. Doug Aagaard wrote a great piece for the May issue about openings for seniors. And, given that we're calling 50-year-old seniors in the chess world, I'm not that far off that myself. So, Doug did a great job of sort of talking about, look, if you're not a kid and you don't have oodles of time to invest, and maybe you don't have a professional coach giving you, opening analysis, how do you approach this? How do you learn openings? How do you choose openings that work for you? And Doug gave us
the nice thing is he gave his own personal, sorry to interrupt, that he gave his own personal experiences about the Rogozin defense and other things. And that instead of just talking about, did I win this nice game and that nice game, he actually talked about what went wrong
Yeah.
in his preparation and what it was like being older, trying to prepare, and what was effective and what wasn't. So that was very impressive because it was nice and modest and realistic.
That's exactly it. I think when I read that piece when it came in, I thought it would resonate with a lot of the readers because they'll see themselves in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, as I say, I subscribe to New in Chess. I subscribe to Chess magazine. You know, the British magazine. I subscribe to a number of state periodicals, and they all have their own niches. But I feel like maybe this is one place where we can sort of hone in and cover the big events. Cover the Grand Prix and cover the National Scholastic Championships and cover the U.S. Championship and all the things that our readers expect. But also each month I want to surprise them. And with New in Chess, you pretty much know what you're going to get. It's going to be Anish Giri giving you great analysis and the book
Peter
reviews.
Svidler or somebody.
What's that?
Sure. Peter Svidler or somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And that's great. And as I say, I subscribe to the magazine myself, but I think what we're doing is something different, and it has to be different to make a magazine stay relevant today. This is the hard thing, and we're still working on it. We're still working on our website. We're still working on giving our online arm all of the tools we need to be able to present material in the best way we can. But eventually one of the things that I'm looking to do is have more synergy between the print magazine and the online version. So, we've started putting your book reviews because you write book reviews for Chess Life, John. We've started putting those online because they shouldn't be locked away. They should be accessible to everyone who has come to know and appreciate your writing over the years. And so, we're trying to do that in a way that makes sense. And we're trying to do things with some of our back catalog. We've got all these tactics in the magazine that Bruce Pandolfini has done for years and years and years. And long term, I'd really like to see some of that stuff come back out and be useful again for people who are just getting into the chess world. There's a lot of ways we can improve, and some of it is it's a question of time. It's a question of personnel. It's like every other group or every other community in the world, we're still coming back to normalcy after the pandemic. Membership is going up and up and up, but we're still not anywhere near where we were before February 2020. So as things continue to improve and we continue to add new things to Chess Life, I feel like we're just going to keep getting better and better.
Yeah, and I think the one area that a national magazine can do that nobody else can do is covering scholastic events and young people's play, so that they can actually find themselves getting a little bit of credit in. Kids all over the country can actually get mentioned and have their photograph and talk about tournaments they played in. I think that's a huge incentive for young players.
Yeah,
to appear in the national magazine and feel that what they're doing is getting some attention.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my longer term goals to bring more and more authors, especially young authors, into chess journalism. And we've had some really good writers. I think my favorite, and I know you've played him. In fact, he wrote about you, a game he had with you, in truly impressive detail a couple of years ago for Chess Life Online. Robert Cialechenko has. He's going to be doing an important cover story for us in the next couple of months. I don't want to give it away because I want to keep it a bit of a surprise. But he's so impressive. He's such a good analyst, a clear writer, has a very strong vision of chess, and he's a kid. I mean, I don't say that. I don't say that in a pejorative way, but I mean, he's a young person, and
sure,
who knows where life is going to take him, but I really hope he keeps writing about chess because he's very good at it.
I agree. Yeah. And speaking of surprises coming up that you may or may not want to reveal, there's an interview with an important American chess player coming up in the June issue.
There is.
Can you tell us about that, or do you not want to give away anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm happy. I think this is a big get for us. We talked to Hikaru Nakamura for about an hour last week, and the interview in its current edited form is about 9,000 words, and I'm putting them all in because for someone like Hikaru, someone who is getting ready to play in the candidates, to take that much time and speak to us. And he turned down other interviews. I mean, I asked him about it. I asked him about a couple in particular. He turned down a number of other interviews, but he talked to Chess Life. And as he told us, he said, he cares about American chess. And, Chess Life has had a big part in chronicling the history of American chess. And so that's why he spoke to us. I think readers are really going to find it interesting. And I suspect that'll be one of those things that we really try to have some synergy between the website and the print magazine. So, I suspect probably sometime almost immediately after June 1st, when the digital edition goes live, we will make that all available on the website for people to read.
Okay, well, let's skip let's get away from the magazine for a little while. Just talk about you. The first question I have for you is very simple. How about your own interest in chess? How were you introduced to chess? And what were your first playing experiences?
So I was taught chess by my psychologist, by my therapist. I was like 12. I was like, yeah, that's not the answer people usually get. I was like 12 or 13. And like a lot of young men, my father and I didn't always get along. And I had some anger issues. And so I was seeing a psychologist, and his name was Shaul Rabinowitz. And I'm not entirely sure why he thought chess would be a good thing for me to learn. But he said, I'm going to teach you chess. And we would play.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. It's funny because I told this story when the first time I was on Ben Johnson's podcast on Perpetual Chess. And afterwards, like I was thinking about it because I was like, like if it wasn't for Shaul, like I wouldn't, chess was not something that was played in my family. So I found him. He's still in practice and on Long Island, and I called him. It was after hours, so I left a message. I just said, you probably don't remember me, but I saw you years and years ago, and you taught me chess, and this is how it worked out, and it was such a great thing for me, and thank you. And a couple of days later, he called me, and it was nice. I mean, who knows how much he remembered me, but he certainly at least remembered enough to have a nice conversation with me. And people don't do that enough. They don't reach out to people who have been meaningful and tell them that they've been meaningful. And so, this one little chance I had to do that was really, really, it was nice to be able to do that.
That's terrific. Yeah. Yeah. It means a lot to people.
Yeah. So I started at the Merrick Library in Merrick, New York, on the South Shore, Long Island. And there was a guy there named Bob Sostak who was as kind as you could be to this kid who was a terrible chess player, but was, really interested in learning. And it was me and a bunch of old Russian guys, basically. And they would tell, sometimes they would mutter to themselves in Russian. And one is a little off color, but I guess, I'm assuming most people here are adults who are listening to this. I was looking at a game from a Chess Life magazine, of course, and I'm doing it, playing the moves out by myself on the board there at the library. And this old man comes by and goes, "You shouldn't play with yourself, you filthy animal." I was like 13 or 14, and what am I going to say? And I was like, "Yes, sir. Okay." But I went there, and my mom drove me, and I mean, of course, big shout out to both my parents. Well, I mean, my mom did most of the driving. My dad was always like, "Did you win any money?" I mean, sometimes because it was, I would get a class prize. He'd be like, "Okay, good, you won some money." But it was usually my mom driving me to these things, and soon I started going to the Nassau Chess Club, which is still running in Nassau County, led by Harold Stenzel, as it's been led by him for many, many years. And I that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I learned what serious chess looked like. And I learned how to be a tournament director by watching Harold. Anyone who has played in an Omaha tournament and who has heard me shushing people, that's all Harold Stenzel. Like that's me channeling him and his demand for, for as much silence and propriety as he could have. So that was really it. And then, I went to college and I played some. And when I was doing my master's on Long Island, I played a little bit. But chess sort of, it wasn't as important while I was trying to finish school, while I was trying to work on my doctorate. When I was really actively avoiding dissertation writing later, it became more important. But and then it sort of picked back up in the early, 2009, 2010, 2011, especially when I moved to Nebraska, when I met a certain international master, John Watson, who for reasons that I will never understand, decided he would deign to give me lessons. And I started playing more, and then eventually, inspired largely by you and your completely unfounded belief in my abilities, I started writing book reviews. And it was at the 2013 US Open where everything sort of took off. I met Dan Lucas. I said, "Oh, hey, I write book reviews," and I ended up winning an award from the CJA. It was very surprising and kind of underhanded, but we're not going to talk about that. No, what happened was I met Jeffrey Rowland and Frank Nero. They were in the playing hall there in Wisconsin. I think it was in Wisconsin. And they're in the playing hall there by themselves. There's nobody there, and they're just playing. And I was going around taking photos for my blog. And so I took some photos of them and started talking to them. And I introduced myself and I said, I do this. And they said, "Oh, what's the website?" And the next thing I know, I'm getting, best blog from the CJA. And that's where it all started. I started writing freelance for Chess Life. Then they gave me the column because it was easier than finding someone to write it every month, which as an editor.
You were also writing your own blog, and you also have always contributed to things like various online venue, right, where you'll talk about things. So, I mean, you've always kind of written for the average person, not even for money, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's I wrote things for the Nebraska State Magazine, run by our mutual friend Kent Nelson, who is truly one of the good people in the chess world. I can't say enough good things about Kent. Websites, but I mean, really, it was the blog. It was just I wanted to contribute, and I wanted to sort of.
And you're on book clubs online. You're on Twitter, right?
Well, now especially, yeah. I mean, Twitter is it's a blessing and a curse. But I mean, I try to contribute to discussions there. Chesspub.com, which is the forum associated with chesspublishing.com, which I recommend to people at every turn. For the amount of money you pay each year, you get an immense amount of great opening material to study. I've recommended it to IMs and GMs who are looking for things.
Okay, let me back off for just a second so we don't forget. Talk a little bit about how you got interested in chess books. I always assumed, I may not be true at all, but that even after you started playing, you were more of someone who read chess books even than you were a player. Is that true? Or?
Yeah, it's fun. I was just reading.
You have a magnificent. By the way, John has a magnificent chess library. It's not huge. It's not 100,000 volumes or something like Lothar Schmidt, but it's excellent quality books, really high quality books. I'm
fortunate in a number of ways. I mean, first of all, my wife, is patient with me and understands that sometimes I buy chess books when I don't need them. Like sometimes there are auctions, like at chesslund.com, which is like a charity wing, I think, for like a Swedish scholastic program. And so there's auctions that people do of less common chess books there. And so, sometimes I end up getting things there. Like I got B.H. Wood's copies, his bound copies with his, with his imprint on it of old issues of the Midwest Chess News. Which, to most people, they don't care. But to me, to have something from Wood and also have it be Nebraska related, there was no way I was not going to get that. And, yeah, so she's very patient and kind with me because, I'm sure that money could be better spent on other things. But
I think a lot of the listeners will know this story.
Yeah. Everyone will hear themselves in this, and yeah. But I built it a lot through review copies, which was, honestly, that's the reason I wanted to start writing the reviews, because I had no money, and I was like, boy, maybe I get some review copies, and then I could write some reviews and get some books. But I've always loved chess literature. When Dvoretsky died. And I wrote about this when we did something about when I did the obit for him online.
That was quite an issue. Yes, that was a very interesting issue.
But one of the things I said was I remember very clearly being in, I think it was a Walden Books in East Meadow, New York, and seeing that first book he put out in English, Secrets of Chess Training, which legend has it, and I don't think it's actually just legend, I think it's true, that U.S. Chess Sales, back when it was sort of run by U.S. Chess, they had to stop carrying it because people would buy it and they would return it because they're like, this is not what I expected.
Really?
Because
wow.
it's this book was so difficult, and there was not.
Yeah, his first books, That and Secrets of Positional Strategy, those two books, they were by Cadogan, and they were kind of shockingly good.
Yeah.
And interesting because they were from the standpoint of the very best players and some really serious concepts of how to play, as opposed to just simple instructional content.
Yeah. But I remember picking that book up off the shelf, and granted, I was rated like 1100. So, there's no reason I should have been reading that book, but I bought it. Like, I remember the smell of it. I remember, because to me, that's what books are. Like, books, you understand this, John, because you're
sure,
also
absolutely.
a bibliophile. But
absolutely,
there is something that cannot be duplicated by digital media. And to be able to look at my shelves and know that I can go whenever and pull off, Averbach's best games. Speaking of somebody who recently passed, or Portish, or the Botvinnik, the 3 volumes from Moravian chess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To have those and to be able to sort of speak with the dead like that. I always thought the way Purdy talked about it was, that when you replay an annotated game, it's like you're conjuring the spirits of the masters from years gone by. And
that's great.
I think that's true. You put yourself in conversation with Alekhine or with Botvinnik or Smyslov. And
sure.
What was it Donner who said that, the chess is the most beautiful way to waste your life?
There you go.
And
hey,
that feels right.
And speaking of books for a second, I wanted to make sure that I asked you which teaching books. You've always been interested in instructional books, and of course, you've had a lot of students yourself, and you've taught classroom courses in chess. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of the experience. Maybe listeners would appreciate a few tips on what teaching books impressed you the most, maybe for let's say the beginner through the young tournament player.
So for me, the best instructional books anywhere are the Chess Steps books, the Stappen Method books. The problem with them is that basically you need someone, you kind of need someone to hold your hand through it, at least at the beginning. They can be used by adult improvers, but it's trickier. But, in terms of a sort of structured path from absolute beginner to master level player, there's nothing better than that. And empirically, the Dutch have had a lot of success building good, strong players using this method. So for me, I think that anyone who wants to better their chess should look at the Steps books. In fact, my chess has been so miserable recently, and I don't know if it's COVID brain. I don't know what it is. But I'm actually going back to step 1, and I'm just starting over. Like I'm just going to try to get the concepts built in and see, what I can do. Other books, I like Yusupov's books from Quality Chess. I think they're wonderful for slightly more advanced players, probably players like 1500, 1600, 1700 to start with, and they get very, very difficult. I have not gotten all the way through them, obviously, but they are excellent. And they're good value. For the money.
Yusupov, he had that series with Olms, right? These Excellence series. So this is something that Quality Chess has done more recently. Do you
Yeah.
know what the
So,
series is called? Or
well, it's like Chess Evolution.
Gotcha. That's it. Chess Evolution.
Something like that. There's three different titles. Yeah. So Yusupov did books with Dvoretsky for Olms. And those were, I think, based on Dvoretsky and Yusupov's school that was in Moscow in the early 1990s. And those are a lot more accessible, like the Secrets of Creative Chess. I think Greg Shahade has recommended this left and right, and it's a wonderful book. It's very readable for normal human beings, people who aren't masters. But these other Yusupov books, they're basically kind of like, they're not quite, they're workbooks, but they have little lessons on them, and they're really, really high quality. So I think there's 10 books now, because there's like a quiz book that they released later. Those are excellent. For lower rated players, I think Peter Giannatos's book that just came out, Everyone's Second Chess Book. A lot of puzzles, but really well constructed and really well thought out. I think that's a really nice book for people to use. And then, of course, I always feel like you should play through the classics. So, if you don't know Morphy's games, get a book of Morphy's games and play through them. The same thing with Alekhine, the same thing with Capablanca. It's not only you'll learn a lot, but it's also I think it's a fun way to spend some time seeing what the great players did, and then trying to figure out how on earth you're supposed to do the same thing.
I also think it's easier to stick with a book like that too. I mean, if you're trying to learn, it can be kind of a drag trying to go through systematic techniques and stay really interested and really have fun with them. Whereas a games collection, at least from my point of view, a games collection is kind of like candy. It's just fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
you don't have to tear apart every note in detail. You can just skim around and go, wow, what an exciting game this was. And look at these two great players slugging it out and pick up a lot of tips. So, so I agree with you there.
For me, I think that's, the biggest thing to remember is that this is a hobby. There are a lot of chess improvers, especially on Twitter, who have sort of, they're like proud of their masochism, like how much training they're able to do and how they're able to optimize it. And I mean, maybe I'm just at a different point in my life, but if I ever get to 2000, that will be an amazing achievement for me. My best result ever was the 2019 US Open. And I gained like 120 rating points and I won the B prize. I got almost a 1900. And that was a good platform for me. But then the COVID came. I had some pretty serious health issues, not COVID related, but I mean, again, if anyone's heard me talk about this before, I have a condition called achalasia, where basically it's a they don't know what causes it, but I lost the ability to swallow, and I had to have some fairly significant surgery to correct or at least better the situation. And now my insides don't look like normal people's insides. That's, that was a big thing. And, whatever the cause was, I am not a 1900 player. And maybe with some work I will be, but I also don't know if I care.
I mean, the main thing at this point is to get back and have some fun just playing and not getting too upset about it.
Yeah.
That's right. I think you're absolutely right. And then you'll find you are a 1900 player pretty easily, actually.
I hope so.
Higher, actually. But you just need to get started again. I think that's true. A lot of people post-COVID are kind of going through this where they really haven't played for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So if they aren't online fanatics.
Yeah, well, and that's, and Nakamura talked about this. He talked about how there's kids right now who, literally trained for 2 years, played online chess, and are now coming back and tearing up the world.
Just incredibly strong.
I mean, some of these Indian kids like Gukesh, Argasi, and of course Prague. I mean, but they were playing. I mean, they were playing in some pretty high level Chess 24 events. But now that like serious rated chess is back, I mean, they're destroying people.
I think we've proven that pure online play, in fact, almost even just pure blitz play, although it'd be nice if you threw in other, of course, those guys played quite a few other games too, but you can improve massively through just pure online play and even blitz games. I think that's always been controversial, right?
Yeah.
Because blitz is sort of. I always thought that you deepened the mistakes you made worse by repeating them again and again and again by playing too much chess. But I think that theory's gone. I think as long as you're young and flexible and your mind is open, just pure sheer quantity of play is actually. Do you agree with that? That's actually pretty much you're going to improve.
I think. I mean, I would not have believed it either. I mean, this is. I mean, I think I got some of the same sort of traditional chess knowledge that you did. That you have to play slow games. Blitz is dangerous.
Because you don't want to reinforce your bad habits, right? That was the theory. But I think it's just kids are so good that they don't really reinforce. They don't. The amount that they learn overwhelms the amount. The small problem of reinforcing mistakes.
Yeah, and I asked Hikaru about this, and I said, look, essentially I said, you're breaking every single rule Botvinnik came up with for chess improvement. Like all you did was play blitz online for 2 years, and now you're in the candidates. How does that work? and he said, honestly, he thinks that the amount of chess he saw was just really, really good for him. And you can't argue with results. So it's a really interesting time to not just be a chess fan, but somebody who isn't interested in pedagogy and improvement, because maybe there is something to just puzzle rush. Maybe there's something to it. It's not for me. I don't seem to improve much when I do that, but
or actually playing whole games maybe is even better, because that whole idea of you're in a sport and you're trying to win, and you've got to know how to kind of time your thoughts and your moves through an entire game.
Yeah.
So even if it's just a rapid game or a blitz game, I think that's even more valuable than puzzles, just personally.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know, John. What do you think? Are there people who are saying that puzzles basically got them to be as strong as they are? Or
I think that's a common error in people's thinking.
Okay. Okay.
Because if you look at players on chess.com, for example, where Puzzle Rush lives, you'll find people who are rated 2,300 in puzzles and rated 1,200 in blitz.
Oh, all the time. Yeah, that's what I see. Yeah.
And I don't. I mean, if there's no correlation between playing strength and tactics, then I'm a little surprised. But also, the old Spielman, Rudolf Spielman, talking about Cialechenko, where he said, I can see the tactics as well as he can. I can't get those positions.
But I think also it's getting those positions in the context of a game and recognizing them.
That's exactly it. Yeah. If you don't have someone whispering to you, there's a tactic here, look for weird moves, you're just not going to find them. So yeah, it's I don't know. The next 10 years are going to be really, really interesting to watch.
Oh, absolutely. So let me, before I'm going to interrupt you again. Before we leave books completely, you mentioned sorting through the U.S. chess library with John Donaldson recently. What was the background on that? And John Donaldson is also one of the great book experts in the entire, as well as authors in the United States. And what kind of surprises did you run into, or what was worth doing about that?
Well, first of all, I had never met John before. We had emailed. He's written for us. He wrote a great cover story about Fischer's legacy that was tied to his book release. So I knew him a little bit. And of course, I know him a little bit through you and through some other people, but I got to spend basically like 2 days with John, and we worked our butts off. I schlepped more boxes of books than I want to think about, than my poor back wants to think about. But it was eye-opening to see how much work has already gone into chess preservation. And what I mean by that is, and I wrote about this a little bit about when I was writing about Ray Hayes. There were a number of very big libraries that were donated to US chess over the years. Hayes was probably the biggest. I think it was like sometime in the 80s, and he won an award for it from the board. There was a time when being editor of Chess Life would have required a library like that, because you have to check game references, or you need to have an opening book on hand to check an assertion by an author. And without having a very serious research library in multiple languages, you're not really going to be able to do that. Today, like just about all of the bulletins that we found, and these were bulletins in German, in Dutch, in Serbian, a lot of Soviet era bulletins. They're all already in Megabase.
I didn't know that.
They've all, I mean, we would go through and I would find something and I'd say, John, do we need to keep this? And he'd say, no, it's in the database. And 9 times out of 10, when I checked, probably more than that, he was right. So, one of the hardest things we had to do was figure out what to keep, what to send to St. Louis, to the World Chess Hall of Fame on permanent loan, which is, I think, how we're going to work it. And then some of the things we decided to keep for US chess. So we really sort of had like 3 different buckets. And the things that we kept for US chess were things like, 2 complete runs of Chess Life, bound editions and a bunch of loose ones as well. Materials that were related to the mission of US chess and also to its history. So,
of course,
US Open bulletins and some mementos and books of historical significance that were maybe signed by players of import. Like we found, you'll remember this book. It's a little green book about endgames by Whitaker. Do you remember this book?
Well, I'm not sure. No, I don't think so. By Norman Whitaker?
By Norman Whitaker and somebody else. But we found 2 copies of it that were inscribed to different people and signed by like 16 members of the Log Cabin Chess Club.
Oh, that's terrific.
So, like the Byrne brothers and everybody. It was amazing to find these. And they were inscribed to different people too. I think it was from like the 1961 US Open where they gave these out to people. And so to find that was really historically important. But unfortunately, there was no way to keep everything. So there was a call for US chess affiliates to go to Crossville and to pick up what amounted to about 130 boxes of books, including, some really, really cool books, some that had never even really been read before. Some had never been opened. Wow. And the people who went there, I suspect they're very, very happy with what they got. The biggest thing is we wanted to make sure that nothing got thrown out. And we were pretty successful in that. All of the books that we weren't able to either keep for US chess or, in particular with a lot of the periodicals, like the state periodicals and some of the foreign language stuff, we're going to give on permanent loan to the Hall of Fame. Anything that we weren't able to keep in either of those buckets has gone to chess enthusiasts. And that was really important to me because it felt like it was a solution that sort of did right by the intentions of the donors, but also made sense in our modern setting. Like, I work remotely. I live in Omaha. I don't have unlimited shelf space as much as I wanted to take home everything. And I did want to take home everything.
To put this in context for a second, the USCF is moving to St. Louis.
Yes.
And what's your impression of where they're moving? You're saying it's basically a much smaller place? Or?
The building in Crossville, which we were so fortunate to get by, under the great work of Harry Sabine, it's huge. And it was built for a time when US Chess had a staff of like 20 people on site, where we had a book and equipment business. It doesn't make sense for the staff we have now, where we're all over the country. Our executive director is in North Carolina. Our director of communications and our publications editor are both in the Atlanta area. I'm in Omaha. So we're so spread out that it doesn't make sense to have a gigantic space like that. So the location hasn't been made public yet for St. Louis. We do, I think we're if we're not under contract for a place, we're very near to being under contract. To me, it's an excellent location in St. Louis. It is, I will say, it is not very close to the club, but I think that's also good. Because, US Chess and the World Chess Hall of Fame, despite all the things we work on, we are separate entities. And I think it's important for us to sort of respect that. And if you go to St. Louis, and I don't know if people are going to be able to visit the office, but it'll be in a location where people could find us pretty easily.
Super. Okay, well, you mentioned you were talking about the next 10 years, and I was actually going to ask you what you think about chess heading into the future. One really easy thing, are you concerned, do you think the time controls are going to just keep shrinking and classical chess time controls will just be something that the average player very seldom even sees? Or will there always be a nice balance there?
My thinking has changed on this a lot. I used to be a purist. I used to want to, and still, I mean, I for whatever reason, I have found that I need time to look at a position and figure out what on earth is going on. So for me, slower time controls are better. It's not an accident that my best results have been at the US Open, where you have, it's 40-2 SD1 or something like that. That said, I think they are going to be less and less common. Because people don't have the time to play, a full old style weekend Swiss anymore. With like a game Friday night, 2 Saturdays, 2 Sunday. It's much easier financially, in terms of, other commitments people have, to play like 5 rapid games and call it a day. And it certainly seems like with the shift to online chess, that rapid time controls are going to win out. Watching a slow tournament online is sometimes, it feels like watching paint dry. But rapid games, there's always something going on, and there's enough turnover that the presentation is easier, and people's attention spans work better with that format. You couple that with the balkanization of the chess world in terms of finance and sponsorship, and chess.com and chess24 and FIDE all sort of competing with one another. I think it's also the dollars are really sort of going to dictate some of this, and blitz and rapid play are going to become more important. And I mean, on the one hand, it's exciting. On the other hand, I sort of feel like we're losing some bit of the tradition. If the World Championship ever is not classic time controls, I'm really going to be very, very sad.
Right. I don't think that's as much of a thing, but I think the idea that the average player might even just run into, I mean, it's inconvenient and it's expensive.
Yeah.
To have a club or to have a place to play even is expensive. There's rentals and it's difficult to organize, and there's a lot of physical labor and involved. And I'm just wondering if we're just going to see less and less of even local chess tournaments in favor of online. And there's no reason why not. I'm not even saying that's a bad idea. I'm just wondering whether you think that's happening.
I hope not. One of the reasons I wanted to write that cover story was precisely to see the people together, and how important that was, the postmortems and the laughter, and being with other people. When we look back, I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of things we take away from the pandemic, but I think the biggest one is we saw just how bad loneliness can be for people.
Sure.
Mental health.
And even from a practical standpoint, I just thought I'd throw this in there, is that I think with students, it's amazing how useful it is to have a good friend in the chess community who's roughly your own strength, or even not maybe, but someone you can get together with and have some fun playing and studying.
Yeah. No, I think it's tremendously important. And it's the death of the local club, or the slow death of the local club, I think is a shame. I'm still trying to find a place here in Omaha that we can have a weekly club, like 1 game a week, like a game 60 game or some rapid games or something like that. And it's hard because, unless you've got money behind you, or you've got an inn with a church or a school or something like that, I mean, you can't afford the rental fees. And
it's so time consuming looking for some place that's going to try to do that, and getting some volunteers to actually help out, with the organization. And you need somebody to help you. For most tournaments, you probably need some people to help you out. I think you did most of yours on your own, but that's a real task.
Well, people as their lives change, they're I mean, I can't do that anymore. I can't.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
I did a lot of organizing here, and I
Yes,
ran a lot of
exactly.
tournaments, and I do not have the energy to do it anymore. Other people are picking it up. Steve Cusimano here in Omaha, great guy. He's picking it up. Mike Gooch,
Okay.
John Linscott, these guys here in Nebraska are picking things up and making them work again. And
It's always been such an underrated part of chess,
yeah,
the contribution of organizers and directors who get a lot of complaints and very little credit.
yeah,
and almost none of them make any money unless they're on some national level and big tournaments with lots of top players and high entry fees. But through state after state, there's nobody making any money on actually running chess
no,
tournaments.
no, it's
And
really hard to do. I mean, especially if you're trying to keep entry fees low for people. So yeah, I mean, all the credit into the world to those guys and to all the organizers out there who, I mean, they're who make US chess run. We're not a national federation like, I mean, I don't want to talk about Russia. I don't want to talk about all that, but like the Russian Federation.
You're
right?
not the federal government.
Right? I mean, that's it. I mean, we don't, that's not
Gotcha.
our role. Our role is
Right.
basically to provide the infrastructure for local people to do what they do.
And certain services.
Yeah,
That's some
and that's
key services. Yeah.
And I mean, they are the heroes.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me when I think, and a lot of these people have been doing it their whole lives. I mean, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, well, and this is one of the things I said when I was on 64 Chess Podcast, is that it's up to the young people now, because there is an entire generation of chess organizers who are getting older. And no, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, like if you
absolutely.
If you look around the delegates meeting at the US Open, when I was a delegate before I was working full time for US Chess or even part time, I was the youngest person in the room. That's not good. Like, we need young people, and there are some people who are stepping up and finding ways to organize and contribute, and they're the future. I mean, those are the people we need to find and nurture and bring into the fold and get them into leadership positions, because they're the ones who are going to carry this forward. It's funny. I'm a big fan of New Orleans music, and to me, the only church I believe in is Preservation Hall. Like that's when I'm in New Orleans, I go to Preservation Hall and I commune with the spirits. And they have a motto called "Protect, Preserve, Perpetuate." And that's what they see their mission as, and that's what I see my mission as too. I mean, that's what being editor of Chess Life.
Sure.
I'm carrying it forward, and I'm trying to, God, I hope they let me do this for 20 years, but however long they let me do it, I want to carry it forward and bring people into the tradition and show them all the great things about chess, and hand it off to somebody else in the future in better shape than I got it. And if I do that, I mean, that's a life well lived.
That would be a great place to end. We've talked for quite a while, but I'd also like to just real quickly have you talk about your work with chess engines and the hardware and software that you use to support chess engines. Some of the work you've done. How did you maybe start out with how you got that interest, and then give whatever details you feel like?
Well, I've always been interested in computers, and I have to thank my late uncle, Roy Hartmann. I have to thank him for that. So my Uncle Roy, he was a hippie and a bit of a stoner. But as long as I knew him, he was always interested in technology. He had like a Commodore 64 that somehow he had made into a portable Commodore 64, had a tiny little screen. It was this big thing. Like, I don't know if anyone listening to this remembers the Commodore 64, but this was a very early personal computer. And I remember going and seeing my grandmother, and he lived on the top half of the house, and I'd go up and play Zaxxon on his computer. And because of him, like I got interested in computers, and when I was at Southern Illinois University, my assistantship was doing computer repair and networking stuff with my dear friend Vince Lacey, who was on faculty there working for him. And so I just sort of, it naturally happened. I'd used ChessBase from the time it was in DOS. And eventually I started building my own computers. Like, my wife chides me because I essentially have a computer lab here in my office. I've got my work desktop. I've got a machine I built specifically for analysis. And I do this because I'm interested in it. But it's also important for my work. Like, compared to normal human beings, I'm a pretty good chess player. Compared to the people I'm editing, I'm a potser. So it's very helpful to me to be able to have super strong engines on call to check things and to make sure that the analysis that goes in the magazine is as good as it can be. And along the way, I've been fortunate to help some players with engines, with accessing them, with buying hardware, understanding what they need and what they don't. I'm even doing some courses or some sessions on using ChessBase for Jakob Aagaard's Killer Chess Training Academy. So I think I've done 6 of them now. I did one last night on searching and all of the different things you can use the search filters for in ChessBase and the different things you can find. It's incredibly useful to know how to use that software. And the problem today is that I think most young people, they're frustrated by it because they expect everything to be like an iPad. Like there's no taking care of your data or installing things in anything other than an app store.
Or even understanding the hardware that involved and just understanding the difference and the importance of
well, I mean,
you can what kind of hardware you need to do good analysis.
Yeah, you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, you can spend as much money as you want on this. And for most normal people, you don't have to spend that much to get a machine that will do everything you want. And then once you really know how to use it and understand what the engine's saying, like, what plus 0.3 means for Stockfish as opposed to sure. 0.7 or 1.5 or 1.8 in different types of positions. Once you understand what that means, I think it's really, really useful. Certainly people can get better without using engines and without using computers. But I think you'd be missing out on look, how many people get to have a grandmaster living in their basement? Living ready for them to ask questions at any moment of the day.
Right.
Probably not many people. But if you have a good computer, Stockfish will tell you why a certain move is wrong. And 99 times out of 100, 99.5 times out of 100, you can trust that it's absolutely right.
It's a new world. Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
I was looking at one of your books today. I was looking at one of your English, your English books for Batsford. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to write that before computers and before databases. I mean, the amount
thousands
of research.
Of index cards.
I can't even think about it.
Handwritten index cards. and scrawled out notes, which of course half of them weren't even correct anyway. The suggestions and things that just occurred to me as I was researching, and of course later turned out to be not really relevant.
Yeah, it's funny. I think maybe, and people talk about this about studying games collections from before the computer era. That is the one danger that I find for our authors. For me, when I'm trying to write, is you have to be very careful to have annotations that make sense to humans. If you just sort of spit back what the engine says, it's not good for anybody. But if you can somehow use the engine to figure out questions that a human would want to have answered, that's where the really good writing kicks in. And
a good example of how treacherous that is that of all people, ChessBase, who really almost invented the chess engine and developed it and have worked with it and sell them and have worked with them for years. If you go to the ChessBase homepage, which is one of my favorites, by the way, and I think it's a great site for news, they often accompany their leading articles with games that are annotated by computer. And they're completely worthless because there's no human intelligence telling you what anything means or it's a little hard to describe, but they don't make any sense.
Yeah. And
they also have verbal annotations with them that are really silly. So here's the most sophisticated site in the world and people in the world who I admire enormously. And they have this very silly kind of output about recent games, the games of the day. And I don't know if you've noticed this, John.
Oh yeah, yeah, and we have actually from time to time we've there have been a couple of events where we've used things like that, like what used to be called anno-fritzed. Today I think it's called tactical analysis. We've occasionally done that, and I absolutely agree with you that the analysis you get through that is no match for what a human could do. Even like a relatively competent human, like an expert or a master level player working with the engine, I think could very easily do, and without much time, a much better job than you get from the automatic thing. The only thing that I think makes me a little merciful in their direction is I know how hard it is to get content out. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, as I say, I admire this site very much. It's my favorite news site. I go there every day.
There's always something interesting at Chatterbait.
It's not criticism. No. It's more just laughing about how deceptive it is for people to use engines when you have these 3,500 strength beasts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they can be, a 1,700 player would do a better job.
Yeah.
So it's quite fun.
It's the only because it's funny because we've talked about this in house, and generally speaking, I'd rather put up bare game scores. But there have been some occasions when we've thought maybe there was worth putting up something like, the game with the Lichess automatic analysis or something like that. Oh, that's actually something that is important for people to understand, though, is that, when you're getting an anno-fritzed game or a game like the Lichess automated analysis, the depth is very, very shallow compared to what you can do with your own engine at home. And sometimes it can be misleading. So sometimes there can be errors there just because, there wasn't enough time set for the analysis to be done, or the online engine just wasn't as strong or anything like that. So,
but it's also very silly. I mean, if there's something that will lead to mate in 5 moves or something, and the person plays something that leads in 7, that is much more logical and is the only possible move you would make in a real game, especially under time pressure. Whereas the other one, almost no sane person would play it. They'll still call one a mistake and the other a better move. So
I think the same thing is true with some of the tactical trainers, is that, if maybe there's a move that's +8 and then there's one that's +3. And if you find the obvious one that's +3
is the one that any tournament player would want to find. Not only would they be the one that they'd more likely find, but there's the one that you really want your student to be playing.
Yeah,
you don't want to be playing the +8 move,
right? Because the chances of finding it over the board are so slim. I mean,
that's right, and the chances to make mistakes resulting from that, or maybe it depends on some lengthy, very marginal one. You only win by 1 move, whereas if you make the +3 move, you win at your leisure.
Right.
so
yeah,
anyway.
it's frustrating, but this is the good thing is that the people who are generating all the tactics, like Lichess and chess.com and Chess Tempo, my personal favorite website for that sort of thing, they're getting better at having more realistic and non-frustrating tactics. So
sure, absolutely.
Hopefully the trend continues. So.
Okay, John, what do you think? I guess we've covered a lot of different subjects, and hopefully you'll be able to interview yourself again or have someone interview you for the same reason, because you'll be writing more cover stories.
I hope not in the near future.
I was thrilled to be able to do this, even though I didn't contribute that much myself, just because I've always admired what you're doing, and I don't know how you can do as much work as you do. I'm just staggered. And I've always admired your contributions to chess so much. So it's really good to get a chance for you to tell your own story a little bit to the listeners. And do you have anything else to say? Tune in next week, right?
Tune in next month. Yeah. Well, we do have podcasts every week, but mine will be next month. And I should say to you, and I know I've said this to you before, but you have been such a great mentor to me, and to have you do this interview with me, it's wonderful. And I can't thank you enough, because I've told people this. If it wasn't for you, I would not have started doing this. I wouldn't have had the courage to do it. But your encouragement and your care for me as a person, it's meant the world. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. Thanks, John. And thanks to all our listeners. And as John says, we'll see you next month.
Perfect. Thank you for listening to this edition of Cover Stories with Chess Life. Our podcast will return next month on the first Tuesday, when we will again be making a deep dive into the pages of Chess Life magazine. US Chess is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose educational mission is to empower people, enrich lives, and enhance communities through chess. To become a member, go to uschess.org and click on the Join button, where you can find a membership option that is right for you. As a member, you enjoy rated play, print and digital copies of Chess Life or Chess Life Kids, and you help US Chess grow the game. If you're already a member, consider clicking on the Donate button at uschess.org. Our podcasts are produced and edited by Jason Andre at Seven Season Films Photography and Media. Please visit sevenseasonfilms.com to find out how to start your own podcast. Thank you, and good chess.